out of this mess? That's the next question.
Well, I believe, first of all, Tom, they need to get out of the high-risk investments.
Amen, I agree.
They need to cut back big time on the management fees, or eliminate them.
I agree again.
They could eliminate all the fees by going to a company like Vanguard, which is a Pennsylvania-based company.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Why aren't they doing business in Pennsylvania? Nobody can answer that one, right?
That's a good question.
It's our own people, our own investment people.
To help the pension funds, I believe it's the PSERS has 7 offices across the state.
Yes, sir.
Vanguard, handling quite a bit more money than they do, only has 2 offices in the nation.
Right.
Wouldn't it make sense to have maybe 3 offices in the state?
Cut some of the overhead.
Cut a lot of the overhead, sell the buildings that they own, put that money in the pension funds
Right.
to offset these losses and bring this back to where the funds are solvent again. My understanding of a report that Jack Wagner just did, Deep Oswald did,
Yes.
in Scranton, stated that if they don't fix this pension, the employees who are receiving the benefits are going to have to take a major cut.
Exactly. That's the real threat that could possibly happen. Just like Detroit.
So actually, the cost to the members of the union could go up, say, 10%.
Yep.
And the benefits could drop 20% if this isn't fixed and handled properly.
So it's a double whammy. Those that are receiving it could take a loss in their income that supposedly was guaranteed, and those that are working now would either have to work longer, take less, and pay in more. It could be a combination of any of those that could potentially happen to both pension funds.
So basically, what's happening here is the employees and the taxpayers are the ones that's being hurt.
Yes, sir. True. And this is the story that has to get out to the public.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not getting enough media coverage on it because it seems like it's not that kind of a sexy issue that they want to deal with, but it's a story that need to be told.
And the fact need to come out.
Exactly. Yeah, and stop the nonsense with these boards attacking either you or I that we don't know what we're talking about. It's their reports that have been used to show the public what they've been doing or not doing. Their own reports.
Now we just got to get more legislators in Harrisburg, Georgia, to get this done.
Amen. Just with what I've been attempting to do with my legislation or McGinnis's legislation, we've only had a handful. I could drop in a bucket. But like with anything else in life, it's the first step. We got to start somewhere. And if we could have a couple public hearings to bring in the people that should know better and those that know better and get this on the public record, maybe we can get some traction with this legislation.
So basically, this waste is what's really driving up the school taxes.
That's a big part of it, absolutely, both at the local level where they have to raise more property taxes in order to pay for the pension bill that they've been incurring. But some matters have to be put on the bargaining and negotiating units too. Because every time you give humongous pay raises out to either management or regular staff people, somebody's got to pay for that because their pensions continue to go up based on their salaries and years of service. And the taxpayers are the ones that have to foot that bill. And we don't directly control that. That's done with the local school boards, and there's 500 of them. Are we on the hook as a state? Yes, we are, because we've got to guarantee those pension plans with the pension board. And I understand that the local school districts put money into it, but so does the state. And then also, it's a three-legged stool. So does the individual employee. So it's the state, the school district, and the individual.
Well, that brings up a question, Tom. I think there's 503 school districts.
500.
500?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you feel that with these pension funds, that somebody on any one of them school boards should have been following how the money was being managed, and it was not the rate of return there?
Well, you know, it's an interesting point you raised because we were talking about this earlier. Each one of those 500 school districts have business managers. Supposed to be pretty well educated in finances and business operations. That's why they're hired, especially with their backgrounds. You really hit a sore point there because I think to myself, weren't they watching what was going on with those pension funds at the state level? Because all the money that their school district was plowing into that, both the individuals and the school district part, wouldn't they have wanted to see what's the rate of return on those investments? Because they're part of it. I mean, they're one of 500, and then you add the state and the individuals, okay? Because the state puts money in, the school district puts money in, the individual employee puts money in. If you were a business manager, major school district, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Reading, don't you want to look at that and say, how much are we getting back? Because we're putting into that pot too.
Right.
And you know what? I haven't heard from a single business manager from any of the school districts in this state. No. I find that kind of curious.
So really, who is protecting the employees on this? Okay, it appears that the school boards are not. I would have thought, because they're paying union dues all the time, that the union people would have been also watching and monitoring this.
Well, it's interesting you mention that because I know with the state, I do believe AFSCME has a representative on that board, and on the school districts, PSEA has a representative on that board. And if I was certainly representing either one, and I'm sure you would be the same way, either one of those two unions, I'd be asking some questions about the rate of return and the investment practices and policies of our employees that we would hire to deal with New York. I mean, I would suspect we have some pretty intelligent people that are serving on those boards. What I think we need to make sure is that they're at least semi-qualified with some financial background. Maybe some training would be needed. I don't want to insult anybody because I don't know all their backgrounds. But I don't think training hurts anybody on the way the investments really work in New York and how these funds operate. And, you know, the rate of return and all the different, you know, when they do talk about real estate, gold and silver, derivatives, and, you know, is it good or isn't it good? And when is it the time to get out and get back in? And how about bonds? And a lot of questions, and I'm sure it gets very complicated. And it's like, I think, many times going through a minefield with investments. And as you have pointed out so many times, get the dice out. Roll the dice. Take your chance, because you can get a dartboard and anybody, you know, could be as lucky or unlucky investing in the market depending on what you pick and when you pick it.
Well, in Jack Wagner's report, he stated that they should have annual education on this.
Yes.
And I remember the PSERS's response was, we will consider it.
Yep.
Now, I personally believe somebody on that board should actually have a license.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it would be beneficial to have a professional who really knows how the market operates sitting on both boards. Now, I think what they'll claim is that they hire those professionals for the staff purposes. Well, if that was true, and those professionals were as professional as they would claim to be, show me. I want to see our investments, whether it's the state or the school district, doubling or tripling. If you can't show me that you're making more than 2%, you need to get out. We should be making, on the average, you know, if all goes well, And I'm just pulling this out from reading all the different reports, like the Warren Buffetts and the Donald Trumps and all these other big players. What's wrong with 5, 6, 7% annually? That's the goal. And if we're not making it, why aren't we making it? And what are we doing that is causing us not to get that rate of return? I'm just, proposing that there should be, and these benchmarks that they tell me about, they're paltry, because if what they are saying really is true, we would have doubled our money. And we didn't. We went up to a certain point, wasn't doubled, and it dropped down considerably, especially in 2008 when the market took a tumble.
Well, in 2007, my understanding is that the pensions were solvent.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So actually, the underfunding up until 2007 really didn't affect the pensions.
No, because the market was going up, 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 and that's what they were looking at. And see, that was the mistake that was made by both the state and the school districts, where we stopped putting money in. That was a mistake, a big, big, big mistake. We should have continued to put what we needed to put back into those pension funds. And that was a terrible, terrible mistake, and I hope we never commit that mistake again.
But if they were solvent in 2007,
Right.
it wasn't because of the underfunding. It was because of the high-risk investments that they took a major path.
Yes, and they torpedoed.
Okay.
Yes,
But then they're turning around and blaming it on the legislators
yes,
for not funding it,
yes,
even though they were solvent
they were,
with the underfunding.
right.
And they never discussed the overfunding that happened in the 90s.
Right.
Nobody talks about the overfunding or the interest on that money and what happened to it.
Yeah, well, that's the other mystery of this whole thing. Where did the money go? I mean, they're saying, oh, we gave a lot more of it out in the pension benefits. That's not completely true, number one. And the other part of that is, we have increased the amounts that we're putting in. Nobody wants to talk about that. But the bill of goods that were sold to us at the time that those pensions were increased was that the market was so high that it wouldn't hurt, blah, blah, blah. And do we make mistakes based on what we're told? Yes. Was it the whole story? I don't think so. It's just like you're saying, where'd the money go? Where did the money go? And by not putting our fair share in, were the local school districts during those years reducing our property taxes? I think back on it, I don't think so. I don't recall mine being reduced. And the same way with the state. I know they make up the budget every year, like we're faced with Wolf this year. But if you weren't putting it in under those 7 years, where was that money that was supposed to be dedicated to the pensions? Where was that money going? Question mark.
Yep.
We don't know. We really don't know.
So to kind of summarize all of this, in 2001, when you voted on the bill, you were given false information.
Yes, sir.
Later on, I think it was 2003,
Mm-hmm.
they made some adjustments. That was based off false information.
Right.
In 2006, we have the PSCRS and the SCRS audited, specific recommendations given,
Right.
and then these reports were never given to the legislator to follow up.
Right.
Even though the board stated that to make some of these changes, they needed the legislators to change the law. Well, how is you as legislators going to change the law because there's a problem if you're not given the problem?
Well, the other interesting thing that you just struck on, remember we have 4 members of the General Assembly sitting on both boards. I don't recall any of those members on either of the boards, the state or the school district, ever proposing that legislation, number one, or even sharing that information that was recommended to them with other members of the General Assembly. which makes it even more curious. Why? Why not? I don't know. I'm just asking a question. I don't sit on either of those boards. I've never have. And it's like so many of these boards and agencies that we have in the state. You can't keep your eye on a moving ball. There's so many different moving balls up there with government, and you've got to trust, and the degree of trust with members and chairman particularly, and your leaders, that they're telling you the truth and what you really need to know when you're voting on issues. That there's thousands of things that we do every year. In any given 2-year session, we may have 5,000 to 6,000 pieces of legislation. The truth of the matter is, 10% may become law. That's all. I mean, you can put all these bills in the world, but it doesn't mean it's going to become law. The other part of this equation is that most of these agencies, like these two boards, can promulgate regulations that they publish in the Pennsylvania Bulletin, and after so many days, it has the effect of becoming law. So they make more law through regulation than we do in the legislature. It's almost like, why do we need to be there? And I oftentimes wonder, do either of these boards promulgate regulations that get published in the Pennsylvania Bulletin? And mostly attorneys look at the Pennsylvania Bulletin, not a lot of members. I mean, it's not really exciting reading. But these are problems that we have to face, really face. Troubling.
Bad situation.
Oh, it is, but what we've worked on over all these months, it's well over a year now, I do believe. We've been trying to make some changes and trying to point out to the members of the General Assembly and the public and the different groups that we're associated with, this is the problem and this is the solution. Will some of you join us in trying to make sure that these changes occur? And they're not radical changes, honestly, when you think about it.
Actually, I believe it's the changes that Jack Wagner wanted.
Exactly.
So we have the bill that caused the problem.
Right.
We have the track record of the problem.
Right.
We have Jack Wagner writing reports to give us the solutions to the problem.
Right.
So realistically, the only thing we have to do is take that, put it into law, and enforce the law, and we could resolve these problems.
I couldn't agree with you more. I do agree. And if we can get the leaders of the parties up there and the chambers to understand what we're talking about, maybe we have a chance of making changes. The only thing that is the fly in the ointment are these political contributions, which I feel should be banned, so that there's no undue influence on either party, either the House or the Senate, that can skew their view of what we're attempting to do to correct this problem. And that's where the rubber really hits the road. I'm sure there's going to be some people that are going to be very happy with me for recommending these things, but that's too bad. It's the way I feel, and I think it's good government. This is a good government issue.
So actually what you need is for the people to get this knowledge,
Yes, sir.
take it to their legislators, and request
Yeah.
that they get on board and do what's right and start to protect them.
I'd like to see that get on the board for a vote, and see how members would vote on it. That would really make it very, very interesting. We'll see if we can get to that point.
Well, Tom, let's keep it going.
We shall do that.
We're going to try to win this war.
Thank you, Richard. I agree.
Whose brain? Abby someone. Abby someone. Abby who? Abby normal.